Could the price of silver go to $500? Well, that's what Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, thinks. And Robert Kiyosaki's not only written several great books, he's also a multi-millionaire investor. So when he makes a call like that, I think that we should all be paying attention. And I actually had a request to cover this topic from Richard Lowhouse, who wrote, "Some pundits, e.g. Robert Kiyosaki, predict a dramatic surge in silver prices in 2023 to $100 or $500 per ounce. For a future video, please consider discussing what one would do to cash out the silver and invest in another investment. For example, if silver soars, I could sell it and convert it to the inflated US dollar and then buy what? Gold, platinum, real estate, stocks, Russian rubles or Chinese yuan, non-perishable food? Appreciate your perspective." So thank you very much for that comment, Richard. And in today's video, we're going to talk about exactly what Robert Kiyosaki was calling for. And then I'll give you my thoughts on potential exit strategies for silver should this prediction come to pass. Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Just want to say a big thank you for tuning into today's video. If you get some value from it and you enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up down below. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to the channel? Okay, so let's take a look at what Robert Kiyosaki was actually forecasting here for the future of silver. And then I'll give you my thoughts on it, and I will try to answer Richard's question to the best of my abilities. And I've got Twitter pulled up here, and you can see I retweeted this, so we're actually on the Smart Silver Stacker Twitter page, so shameless plug. Follow me on Twitter at StackSmarter. And I've retweeted these tweets from the real Kiyosaki, or Robert Kiyosaki's Twitter account. Now, the first thing he posted was on October 1st. He wrote, "Will the US dollar follow English pound sterling? I believe it will. I believe US dollar will crash by January 2023 after the Fed pivots. To profit from crash of US dollar, I bought many more US silver buffalo rounds. Silver is a bargain. I will not be a victim of effed Fed. Take care." Okay, so Robert refuses to be a victim of the debasement of the currency by the Federal Reserve. He's stacking more buffalo rounds, and I think that that sounds like a pretty good strategy. And he references the English pound sterling there. And if you'll recall, just last week, the Bank of England announced a return to quantitative easing with an unlimited bond buying program that was designed to stabilize yields in the UK bond market, or the UK gilts, as they call their bonds over there. And when that announcement was made, the pound sterling crashed to an all-time low against the dollar. I think it was about 104, so near parity. And should the Federal Reserve pivot, yeah, I think that it's very likely that the dollar will lose a significant portion of its purchasing power. I mean, it's already losing purchasing power. It's just that it's doing better than some of these other currencies. But once the Fed pivots, which I believe is inevitable, that is going to change. And it's inevitable because, we have such a staggering level of debt that there's no way that the U.S. economy and the global economy can withstand higher interest rates for much longer. So yeah, the Fed probably does have a few interest rates left up its sleeve, but they're going to run out of those soon. Something's going to break and they're going to be forced to reverse. And then I think when they do that, silver's really going to soar. That move that we saw on Monday of almost 10% in the silver market is going to look like child's play when the Fed actually is forced to pivot. Now, on October 2nd, we had another tweet from Robert Kiyosaki here. It says, "Buying opportunity. If Fed continues raising interest rates, the US dollar will get stronger, causing gold, silver, and Bitcoin prices to go lower. Buy more. When the Fed pivots and drops interest rates as England just did, you will smile while others cry. Take care." And yeah, I think that right now, gold and silver are coming under some pressure, and they could very well come under some additional pressure. I know we just had this big move up over the past couple days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the pain is over for the precious metals market. But again, this is an opportunity. I mean, me personally, I am still stacking. I have no plans to sell my silver anywhere near today's prices. So pullbacks, honestly, are a welcome opportunity. We are seeing premiums move up. I put a video out about that earlier today. But nonetheless, if we do get a major sell-off in asset classes as a result of a rising dollar, it's likely that we'll still be able to get some physical metal at a slightly cheaper price than today. Although, that's not guaranteed. So I wouldn't hold off if you don't have any metal. Certainly, today's prices are very cheap historically, silver is an extremely undervalued asset, but there could be more pain. So, embarking on a program of dollar cost averaging, I think, is a good approach. That's what I've always done. I like to buy on days when there is red in the silver market, not green. That can be difficult to do. Emotionally, you want to buy when things are going up, you get the FOMO, but really what you want to do is you want to buy when there's blood in the streets. Now, I pretty much concur with everything Robert Kiyosaki says here in these tweets. I do think that the dollar is likely going to crash and that the strength that we've been seeing is a temporary phenomenon. And I do believe that this will occur when the Fed is forced to pivot. Now, exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know. He thinks by January of 2023. That seems awfully soon, but there's a lot of things at play that will be coming into effect before that time. There's the whole embargo on Russian oil, which is set to kick in at the end of this year, and that is going to really throw a monkey wrench in the global energy markets, I think. The British and EU insurance companies are going to stop underwriting Russian oil tankers, and that represents a pretty good chunk of world oil. OPEC just cut production too, so the stage is getting set for a pretty horrible collapse here in the global economy, and January, it could come that early. It's as good a date as any. Now, moving on to Richard's question here, there were several parts to that question. Basically, he's saying if the price of silver soars, let's say it goes to $500, should you sell them for inflated US dollars? Well, maybe you might want to sell some for dollars, although should the dollar begin to lose a significant portion of its purchasing power, I wouldn't necessarily view that as like a buying opportunity in the dollar. Because I think when the plunge begins, it's going to have a long way to go. Now, it also depends on how much silver you have, because if you just have kind of a small stack that is designed to give you some insurance against a debt crisis or currency collapse or that sort of thing, then you might want to just sell it out piecemeal to make purchases as you need them. I have some family that lived through the Venezuelan economic crisis and the economic downturn there. And several of them relied on precious metals that they own, mostly in the form of jewelry, but they did sell quite a bit of gold and some silver just to kind of make ends meet and get them through the worst days of that economic crisis. And these folks are, just your average middle-class people, and basically what they were forced to do as their currency collapsed was they would sell small amounts of metal to make ends meet, when they had to get a car repair or when they needed to get a new air conditioner or when they needed to go buy some groceries or buy some water to fill up their cistern because, they didn't have regular water delivery. So they would have to pay trucks to give them drinking water. They'd fill up tanks at their house. So, that's the sort of thing that they were using their small amounts of metal to do just to survive a currency collapse. And, things could get that ugly here in the United States. It's hard to imagine, but when you look at the scale of the debt and the abuse of the dollar's status as the world reserve currency and all the inflation that we've been exporting for years, I certainly think that the problems here could get as bad as in Venezuela, especially when you look at our leadership's response. From basically both parties. They're both seem to be pretty committed to destroying the US dollar at this point. And another item that you mentioned was non-perishable food. So kind of on this same note, I wouldn't plan on selling your silver and buying non-perishable food with it after some kind of an economic crisis. If you anticipate a dollar crisis and an economic crisis, it's probably a good idea for you to go ahead and stack up your non-perishable food now. I definitely advocate, if you don't have emergency food supplies, don't bother buying silver or any other financial instrument for that matter. Get yourself some non-perishable food, whether you buy some Mountain House food or you buy some MREs or you stack a bunch of rice and beans in Mylar bags with desiccants and oxygen absorbers to make them last, 30 years or so. Whatever you're doing, get on some kind of a food preparedness program. Don't count on your silver's ability to purchase non-perishable food after the fact, because if there's a food shortage, then food is going to be worth more than precious metals. Okay, so there's that. But there's only so much food that you can store, unless you live in a warehouse, there's only so much food you can stack up. Even if you've got an extra room in your house or some big closets, there's a practical limit to that. So I would say stack up on as much food as you can, or at least a reasonable amount. If you don't have, say, a year's supply of food, there's always room to stack up some more just in case. And trust me, everybody living in Venezuela, if they had food storage, they fared a lot better than those who didn't. So some lessons to be learned there. Now, If you have more metal stacked, though, like you have a large precious metal stack, whether gold or silver or what have you, and the price of precious metals soars, you could sell it and get into other assets, certainly. Now, I know we're talking specifically about silver here, so you asked, should you buy gold? Well, if we take a look at the gold to silver ratio over at SD Bullion here, they've got a 70-year chart of the gold to silver ratio, and you can see that right now we're just under 90, right around 90, and historically that is very high. And what that means is that silver is really cheap relative to gold right now. So yes, if the precious metals soar, likely this ratio will collapse. You know, back in 1980, it got under 20. It was under 20 back in the 1960s for a time period as well. In 2011, it got as low as almost 30. So let's just say it does that again. Let's say it drops to 30. Regardless of what the price of gold and silver are, you'll be able to get 3 times more gold than you can today by swapping your silver for your gold, if you take my meaning. So yes, I definitely think that swapping out some silver for some gold would probably be a wise decision if the gold to silver ratio collapses. You also mentioned platinum. Platinum is an interesting metal. It doesn't have quite the monetary history that gold and silver do, but still, I like platinum. But you know, the thing about platinum is right now it's actually very cheap. It's potentially even more undervalued than silver. I still like silver more because it has the monetary history that it does. It's a lot more ubiquitous and recognized. But platinum, there's such a small supply of it. You know, gold, they say if you take all the gold, ever mind, you could fill up 4 Olympic swimming pools. But if you take all the platinum, ever mind, and you put it in an Olympic swimming pool, it's only going to come up to your ankles. So certainly if platinum stays really cheap and the ratio of silver to platinum is extremely favorable, why not get your hands on it? We've seen with metals like rhodium and palladium, which are both platinum group metals, there can be massive squeezes and spikes in the price of metals like that. So having some platinum on hand is not a bad thing. I mean, I have some, I like it as a metal, but I do think it's a lot more speculative than silver and gold. So I hope that answers some of the question about platinum. Now, you also mentioned real estate. Now, I'll just say right off the bat, I'm not really super knowledgeable about real estate, but you know, one thing that happened back in 2008 was the price of residential homes crashed in a big way. You know, we had a huge real estate bubble and then it crashed. So I think a lot of people assume that it will again. And while residential real estate right now, I think, is overpriced, you know, single family homes are crazy, rents are way up, there is still a persistent shortage of housing and the population is growing. So I think that that will kind of put a floor under housing. And also, one other thing that makes me kind of nervous about real estate is that in 2020, remember how they put the moratorium on evictions? Well, if we get a major economic collapse or a dollar collapse, I think we could see that again, and we'll probably see price controls on rents as well, because when politicians have to pick a side between renters and landlords, well, there's a lot more renters and a lot more votes. So, you know, I'm not so sure about residential real estate. Now, if you own your own home, selling some silver to pay off your mortgage would be good, and if you have a mortgage and you hold metals, this could be a way that you really benefit in the sense that you'll be able to pay off your mortgage in devalued currency by selling a small portion of your metal. So, you know, that's one way that you could really benefit from a surge in the price of silver as far as real estate goes. One other thing you might take a look at is commercial real estate, because, again, I'm not really a real estate guy, but I do think that when the economy collapses and when the dollar collapses, a lot of businesses are going to fail. So there probably will be some kind of a fire sale in commercial real estate. So if you're looking for, you know, the screaming deals as things fall apart, if you're the person who holds some real hard money like silver, you might be able to scoop up some, you know, business, commercial real estate on the cheap. And, you know, that was one thing that they said during the Weimar hyperinflation, was that you could buy houses for very, very low prices if you had precious metals. So I know that that's kind of on the residential side of things, but I'm just pointing out that there have been historical precedents for this kind of thing. I think that the story goes that you could buy, you know, some luxurious downtown home in Berlin for like a couple of gold coins at the height of the Weimar hyperinflation. So that is also something to consider. One other thing you asked about, Richard, was Russian rubles or Chinese yuan. And I personally would not really be too interested in swapping my silver for those foreign fiat currencies. I'm not a huge fan of fiat currencies. I think if I did sell my silver, it would probably be for dollars. Again, not a huge fan of fiat, especially fiat currencies that are printed by, despotic authoritarian regimes, because if you don't have the rule of law in a big way in your country, I mean, what good is your currency, right? So no, personally, I would not be buying any Russian rubles or Chinese yuan. Now, stocks. Okay, so none of this is financial advice. Just got to point that out right off the bat. But if you look at the Dow to silver ratio, silver is really cheap relative to stocks right now. I mean, we have maybe one of the biggest bubbles in stocks, and I know the air has been coming out of that lately, but still, the valuations in stocks are extremely rich. And when the dollar collapses, I do think that there are going to be some really big opportunities here. Not in, the Netflixes of the world necessarily, or the trendy tech stocks, the Snapchats, the Pinterests, not necessarily things like that, but stocks that provide essential services and products, utilities, companies that sell consumer staples, companies that are going to thrive even if people have to cut back on their spending dramatically. And so I think that those businesses, the good stocks, probably will get sold off with the bad ones if we get some kind of a collapse. Or it could just be that they may not even lose nominal value if we get some kind of major inflation. Maybe the stock prices will go up, but they just won't go up nearly as fast as the price of gold and silver. So priced in silver, they will decline. And so, yeah, I do think that there will be some opportunities there. Like I said, consumer essential stocks, stocks that need to operate to provide the necessities of life, and preferably ones that pay dividends, maybe even dividends in foreign currencies. So you might want to look abroad as well, because if the dollar is really suffering, I know it's got a lot of strength relative to these foreign currencies now, but that trend may reverse. And if that happens, companies that are paying dividends in foreign currencies will benefit from that loss of power in the dollar. Okay, so I hope that helps to answer your question, Richard. Thank you so much for leaving me that great comment. And for all of you out there, let me know what you think about Robert Kiyosaki's call. Do you think that we will see $500 silver by 2023? Because that is a massive increase from where we're at right now. That's about a 2,500% increase. But, crazier things have happened. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you all very much for watching. Stay safe and happy stacking, and I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.